The Battle of Britain. The sky held the line. The summer of 1940 was supposed to end with Nazi flags fluttering over Buckingham Palace. Hitler, having smashed through Poland, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands in lightning succession, believed Britain would fall just as easily, perhaps with a few well-placed bombs and a signed treaty. After all, hadn't the mighty French army just crumbled in 6 weeks? Britain stood alone. No allies, no backup. Just one island nation staring down the war machine that had swallowed half of Europe. But what Hitler hadn't counted on, what even many in Britain doubted, was that the island would fight not just on the beaches or the landing grounds, but in the sky. And the sky held. It began not with the roar of engines, but with a whisper of fear. Every day, civilians in southern England craned their necks to the skies, watching contrails snake through the clouds. Some would drop their shopping bags and run for cover. Others simply froze. Somewhere above them, dozens, sometimes hundreds of aircraft were locked in lethal combat. The future of Europe didn't lie in the halls of diplomacy. It was being written with smoke trails and gunfire thousands of feet above their heads. What we now call the Battle of Britain wasn't supposed to be a battle at all. To Hitler, it was a stepping stone. Operation Sea Lion, the code name for the invasion of Britain, needed just one thing to succeed: air superiority. Before German troops could cross the Channel, the Luftwaffe had to wipe out the Royal Air Force. The math seemed simple. Germany had more aircraft, more trained pilots, more experience. The Luftwaffe had already annihilated the Polish and French air forces. Britain, on the other hand, had lost planes at Dunkirk and was spread thin. Some German commanders thought the whole campaign would take 2 weeks. But then came a man named Hugh Dowding. Dowding wasn't charismatic. He wasn't particularly beloved. Some thought him cold, awkward, even a little odd. But he was the architect of something Britain had never had before: an integrated air defense system. While Germany relied on brute force and coordination from the ground, Dowding's Fighter Command used radar, a new experimental technology at the time, and a network of observers and operators to direct British fighters with deadly efficiency. Radar, still in its infancy, gave Britain something the Luftwaffe didn't have: time. With enough warning, RAF squadrons could launch before German bombers even reached the coastline. It turned the English Channel into an invisible moat, one that turned back wave after wave of attackers. But radar wasn't enough. This was a battle fought by boys, some barely out of school, who climbed into Spitfires and Hurricanes knowing they were outnumbered. The average RAF pilot had just a few hours of flight training. Some barely knew how to shoot, but what they lacked in experience they made up for with desperation and tenacity. Fighter Command divided Britain into 4 groups. The worst of the storm, the heaviest pressure, fell on number 11 Group, covering southeast England and London. Every morning, Group 11's pilots waited by their planes, sometimes playing cards or drinking tea in the shade of their cockpits. Then the phones would ring. Bandits inbound. A red light would flash, and they'd scramble, engines screaming to life as they launched into the clouds, not knowing if they'd return. German bombers came in tight formations, flanked by Bf 109 fighters. British squadrons would shoot through the fighters to get at the bombers. Dogfights were fast and brutal. High G-turns, tracers ripping across the sky, radios filled with static and screams. The British planes, especially the Spitfire, were agile and elegant, but the Hurricane, though slower, shot down more enemy planes. Why? Because it targeted the bombers. The Spitfires tangled with the escorts, while Hurricanes made sure the payloads never landed. But the Luftwaffe had an advantage that seemed insurmountable: attrition. German airfields were just across the Channel, minutes away. British pilots, when shot down over home soil, could parachute into a field and return to base by nightfall. German pilots who bailed out became prisoners. Still, the RAF was losing pilots faster than they could train new ones. In July and August, the pressure was suffocating. And then something changed. On August 24th, a group of German bombers, likely off course, dropped their bombs not on military targets, but on the heart of London. It was a mistake. Up until then, Hitler had ordered attacks only on airfields and radar stations. But in retaliation for the London bombing, Churchill ordered an air raid on Berlin. The damage was minimal, but the psychological impact? Immense. Hitler was enraged. He ordered the Luftwaffe to abandon its strategy of strangling the RAF and instead focus on bombing London into submission. The Blitz had begun. Night after night, the capital burned. Firestorms roared through neighborhoods. Families huddled in underground stations as bombs flattened streets. Yet, ironically, this shift in German strategy gave the RAF room to breathe. Airfields were no longer the main target. Fighter command, once on the verge of collapse, recovered. September 15, 1940. The day many historians now mark as the turning point. The Luftwaffe launched its largest raid yet. Over 1,500 aircraft filled the skies. But this time, the RAF was ready. Using radar, coordinated squadrons, and sheer guts, they shot down nearly 60 German planes in a single day. British losses were heavy, but manageable. When Hitler realized the RAF couldn't be broken, and that Operation Sea Lion would never happen, he quietly shelved the invasion plans. No dramatic announcement, no surrender, just silence. The Battle of Britain was over. Winston Churchill would later sum it up with those now famous words: "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." But the few, as they were called, weren't superheroes. They were teenagers, students, farmers' sons, Canadians, Poles, New Zealanders. Some wore glasses. Some had never flown in combat. Some were dead within a week of arriving. But all of them climbed into the sky knowing exactly what was at stake. And while the battle raged above, the country below transformed. Housewives became fire wardens. Children were evacuated to the countryside. Factory workers, mostly women, worked double shifts, building aircraft faster than ever before. This was total war. Everyone fought. There are little details that often go untold, like how some RAF pilots would joke about surviving by lighting cigarettes with the burning wings of enemy planes, or how German bombers would sometimes jettison their payloads in panic, dropping bombs into empty fields just to escape alive, or how radar operators, many of them young women, would track hundreds of blips on a screen, guiding fighters without ever seeing the sky. And then there were the stories of survival. Pilots pulled from burning wreckage, faces charred but eyes still sharp. Men who were shot down 6, 7 times and still flew again. The Luftwaffe called them Tommies in the sky, and some German aces respected them more than their own comrades. By the end of October, the Luftwaffe had lost over 1,700 aircraft. Britain, over 1,000. Thousands were dead. And yet, the invasion never came. The White Cliffs of Dover stayed quiet. Britain had held. Strategically, the battle prevented Germany from achieving air superiority. Politically, it was a message: Britain would not back down. But symbolically, it was more than that. It was hope. The first real sign that Hitler could be stopped. That the war, which had been a series of dark chapters, might one day turn a page. Later, American pilots would join the fight. Soviet armies would break the Eastern Front. The Allies would storm the beaches of Normandy. But all of it, the survival of Britain, the resistance of free Europe, hinged on those few months in the summer of 1940, when the outcome of the war was decided not on land or sea, but in the clouds. The Battle of Britain wasn't just a military engagement. It was a test of will, of technology, of strategy, of soul. And for once, in the deadliest war humanity had ever seen, the good guys won the opening round.